What is up, guys? So today we're doing something that you have asked me to do for ages and I just haven't ever got around to it. I haven't really ever figured out a way I want to do it, but I finally have. So we're going to be looking at bot lane combinations and synergies for different champions, kind of which ones work well together, why they do, and also how to play them and how to kind of win that lane. So for the first episode, this time we're going to be looking at Graves and Jinx. So let's start off with Graves and looking at his aggressive support pairing first in Leona. So Leona has a good amount of damage on her abilities anyway. She has a passive, and when you combine that with Graves' damage, you have a huge amount of AoE damage capable of one-shotting pretty much anyone. So the key to this matchup is using Leona's passive stacks properly. Like Graves has his Q, his W and his ultimate, which all proc them, and so it's really easy to get at least 3 out of 4 of those passive stacks. That's going to be your all-in after level 6, and that's when your combo is really deadly, but pre-6 you're also strong with these kind of burst trades. So Leona starts with 4 health potions, right, and the enemy AD carry only has 1. So Leona can go in, she can stun the enemy AD, Graves follows it up with an auto plus Q combo, and then you can both disengage. So that's a really simple trade. It will force him to use his potion, and Graves will take hardly any damage, only Leona will, and she has a lot of potions to heal back up. So if we move on to his passive support in Thresh, and well, Thresh doesn't really have to just be passive, right? But he can use his kit to either disengage or engage, and that's kind of the important thing. So Thresh can box to protect Graves, he can hook and run away, flame run away, but he can also use his things to set up kills. It's kind of like the threat of being able to use them aggressively, which is what you want to do more as a passive support player. Like Graves' win conditions in lane are to win the lane, like he's a lane bully and you should always come out ahead. Even if you don't actually want to fight, when you're stronger you can push up a bit, zone the enemy AD carry, because if he comes forward he's in range of you hooking him. The other good thing is that you don't even have to follow up a hook if you do hit it, you can just hold him in place and then let it drop. When he's hooked, Graves can just auto and Q, which is like the ideal trade, and because he is hooked he can't return any damage. Janna kind of counters every aggressive lane because of her disengage, so when Graves goes in she can ultimate him away, follow that up with a knock up from her Q, and by that time her AD is going to be safe. A more direct counter though to Graves is going to be Braum. Now I hate playing against Braum when I play Graves. Braum's shield can block his Q, his W and his ultimate, like all of his damage, and it makes playing against him really hard. It really turned into a waiting game as well, and whoever uses their spells first is probably going to lose. If Braum shields first, then Graves can hold his damage until it's down, and if Graves tries to use his damage first, then Braum can put up his shield while it's mid-flight and block it all. So next up we have Jinx, and she is actually getting really popular now, partly because of this kind of hyper carry state where games are getting longer, but also because she's a very good tank killer. So for aggressive support, we're going to go with Blitzcrank. Now a lot of these are kind of like Leona also works and Thresh also works as well, but the reason I'm picking Blitzcrank is because of his natural damage. The idea or synergy here is that you're going to mix your fist, or well, okay, your knock up, probably shouldn't call it fist actually. You're going to mix your knock up and your chompers together to create a CC chain, which is going to hold them in place and allow you to kill them. Now this is especially after level 6, this is really dangerous and will pretty much always land you a kill, but pre-6 is really good harass. So Blitzcrank is going to pull someone in, he's then going to knock them up into the air, at which point you place your chompers down onto Blitzcrank, they're going to charge by the time the enemy lands, he'll be locked in place again, and that CG chain should be long enough for you to actually kill them. Now when we're looking at passive supports, we're kind of covering up their weaknesses, right? And Jinx's biggest weakness is that she doesn't have an escape and she's very immobile until she gets that reset. So in teamfights, when you're playing with a Jinx, the biggest thing you have to do is keep her alive until she gets that reset, because after the reset, she can kind of look after herself. So Janna is probably the best person to do this because she can ult people away, she can slow them, she can use her Q, and you also rush a Crucible, or you tend to on Janna. It's actually quite viable, so that's going to keep her alive even more. Now obviously as a passive support you don't really offer too much in lane, but the biggest thing is that she's an anti-camp champion. So what I mean is that you'll especially see this when we come to the counters, but Jinx is going to suffer from being camped because pretty much every jungler right now has crowd control and she isn't mobile at all. So when we're looking at counters for Jinx, there are 2 champions that spring to mind. Now Morgana and Annie. Annie's probably the #1 counter, so let's just go for Morg first. So Morg's binding is a really good way of locking down Jinx from range, and it's a really good poke with your W as well. well, so you can kind of get lane control from this. It's not so much of an all-in. Annie, on the other hand, is a very all-in kind of aggressive support, and the reason she counters Jinx so hard is because she can basically one-shot her with a very little help from her AD carry. The reason this is so good is because Jinx takes time to ramp up. She takes time for her attack speed to build up. She takes time to kill you. And that is just time you don't have when you're playing against an Annie. You're pretty much dead already after her combo with her ultimate, and you don't have time to get that reset and escape. So that pretty much wraps up this episode, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. When I first thought about doing it, I wanted to do kind of 3 or 4 ADs per video, but when I started to record this after just Graves and Jinx, it was already kind of long, so I didn't really want to cut them down. I just left it as a 2, and I'll do more of these kind of shorter 5-minute videos. As with all of my new series, I'd love hearing what you guys think, so make sure you comment down below whether you like it or what I could be doing better. But that's all for this time, so I'll catch you next video.